It feels good to be live on a Monday night. Hey, what's going on, guys? Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you. And before I get into this Raw post show, I just want to set you guys hit the like button and subscribe. It helps the channel out more ways than you even know. Plus, it's free. So this is the go home show for the King of the Ring PLE that will be taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia throughout this whole day. Based off of what's going on with the political climate in this country, we have heard all these different reports and all these different people calling for this show to be canceled or be relocated or rescheduled. But thanks to what went down between our leadership and the leadership of Iran, we have seen a ceasefire and the show will go on as planned, right? But heading into this show, we had two big-time King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring qualifier matches. We had the main event between Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes, and we had Roxanne Perez versus Jade Cargill. I know that for most 10-year-olds, that Cody Rhodes versus Jey Uso was probably their version of the Mega Powers or the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan going one-on-one against each other. But we're going to talk about that later on. Overall, this was a very positive and a very, story-driven show to where we had a lot of progression in multiple different storylines, especially going through what's going down with the Judgment Day due to the fact that they lost Liv Morgan. And like I said, with the qualifiers, setting up what we're going to get at the King of the Ring PLE. This should be a very eventful PLE due to the matches that we're going to get, right? Obviously, we're going to get Sami Zayn now and Karrion Kross, and we're going to get John Cena versus CM Punk for what is most likely going to be the final time in their historic rivalry. And now we have new King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring final matches set up. But we're going to start from the beginning. And the show is opened up by none other than Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman and their Deadly Alliance. Now, I know that there's been a lot of frustration with this group. That's starting to really kind of boil over with the fans. I know that when it was first created, very similar to the John Cena heel turn, that people thought, oh man, this is a magical, great idea. But the execution hasn't really been up to a lot of people's liking. For me, I am cool with it. I think on paper, the whole layout of the group works. But what I don't really like about it is the fact that we have Braun Breaker, who is obviously next up when it comes to who's going to be the big time superstar in the WWE. And we have this huge man in Bronson Reed, who obviously has been very impressive the last several months before his injury and post injury. I don't like the fact that they're basically mutes. Now, it makes sense that you're going to have Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins do the majority of the talking, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these two other guys need to be mutes. But we kick off the show with Seth Rollins, and Seth is basically, getting the reaction from the people, singing his theme song and all of that. And he basically tells the crowd, which the show takes place in Columbus, is, Columbus, you're sending me mixed signals. 1 minute, you're sending me all these different mixed signals. Tell me what you want, right? Then you get the CM Punk chants, and that's where Seth Rollins, he's basically like, that's kind of what I thought. 1 minute you're chanting, CM Punk. Next minute you're chanting for Roman Reigns. Next minute, you're singing my theme song. And sometimes it takes a guy like me to basically tell you guys what you really want. And then he goes on to take credit for all these different things that people like, basically saying, I made Roman Reigns, us being involved in the Shield. If there was no Shield, there would be Roman Reigns, which is my thing. CM Punk's return in the WWE wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for me. I know they like to tell this story about how, he wanted this kind of redemption arc, but what really is WWE brought CM Punk in because they knew I would hate him. It would be a big time controversy. Then he goes on to name the World Heavyweight Championship, which he was the first World Heavyweight Champion. That's a historic moment. Brings up the NXT Championship, which is something that he was the first NXT champion as well. So he's taking credit for all these different events and all these different acquisitions that the company has made. And then he goes on to talk about how, he's the best that the past has, best that the present has, and what's up next is Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. And before these guys even got into their promo, you saw them talk about the beatdown that went down on SmackDown on Friday that happened between LA Knight and Bronson Reed. And they state the fact that LA Knight is out. He is injured. because of the tsunamis that he took from Bronson Reed. And then we get the setup of we're going to have Braun Breaker going one-on-one with Penta. And Braun Breaker is going to do basically the exact same thing to Penta as to what Bronson Reed did to LA Knight. And as we get right into the match between Penta and Braun Breaker, and you knew that these guys, they've wrestled multiple different times throughout, the debut period that we've had that Penta's been in the company. They've always seemed to deliver. I thought the aspect that these two guys, the two differences between these two individuals, Braun Breaker is this freakish athlete who's obviously very strong and very fast for a guy who's athletic as he is. And Penta, with all the different flipping maneuvers that he's able to do and the speed that he brings into the match, you knew that these guys were going to be able to deliver because we've seen multiple different occasions where they've been able to do that. And that's exactly what we got. We had another really good match in the entry of these series of matches that these two guys have had. Ultimately, we see Braun Breaker basically tear, Penta in half with a spear. We got a 1-2-3 count. Braun Breaker picked up the W. Then we had Seth Rollins after that match warn Penta to stay out of his business. This is a one-time warning that Penta received that he's basically going to get a case of the beats if he keeps interfering with Seth Rollins' business. Guys, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. Tell a friend, be a friend. Advertise that we go live Monday nights every single post Raw, right? Then we get a backstage segment between Adam Pearce. You hear him on the phone bringing up the women's tag title because, as we all know, Liv Morgan is injured. But before he could really get into that, he's interrupted by AJ Styles. And AJ Styles is basically told that Dom Mysterio is injured. Whew. Sure. Late nights. And that their match that's supposed to take place at King of the Ring is postponed. And he basically said that, once Dominic is 100%, AJ is going to be the first person in line. We also see the New Day accompanied by Grayson Waller behind that. And they're told that next week we're going to have Finn Balor and JD McDonough go one-on-one with the New Day for the tag titles. They don't like that. Apparently, they don't like being champions and having to defend their championship, which, hey, it is what it is. Next, we get a sit-down interview vignette that is between Michael Cole and Goldberg. It's reported that Goldberg is going to make every single Raw leading up to Saturday night's main event except for next week in Pittsburgh. The show will be taking place. Oh my God. The show will be taking place at 6 instead of 8 o'clock. So we're going to have to, what would be the word? We're going to do the show earlier than we usually do, which is good for me, right? Because I'm getting older and Raw at 6 works for me. So we're getting this interview between Michael Cole and Goldberg. And Michael Cole asks Goldberg, he's like, what is it about Gunther, that gets you in this mood? And then he goes back to talking about Bad Blood, how, we were in Atlanta. I was there, not as a wrestler, not getting ready for a match, but as a fan, there with my wife, there with my son, to have a good time, be in my, adopted hometown, enjoy the show, just sit back there. And Gunther just sat there and he disrespected me, and embarrassed me, not just in front of my son, in front of my wife. He said, and in front of my adopted hometown of Atlanta. And he says, I don't take that lightly, and I've been vying for this retirement match, for some time, and there hasn't been an obvious opponent. And now I've been put in a position where the opponent has become a lot obvious. And we're going to get Gunther versus Goldberg at Saturday night's main event. Everybody's excited for that. At least there's a portion of it. What's so funny about that is how, how many different options we're going to get that day, right? Because earlier in that day, we're going to have NXT, the Great American Bash, and obviously we're going to have All In with AEW. And then later on in that night, we're going to have Goldberg's last match. It's just strange that we're going to have, we're going to have this Okada versus Kenny Omega match, which is probably going to be, really fantastic, very technical. We're going to see these two guys, ignite a feud that we've seen multiple different times throughout the, the decade. And then we're going to get Goldberg. Right? So it's just different audiences being served different things. Go to the comment section. So the grandpa, what's going on, Pops? I'm surprised that you're up. I'm glad that you're here. But we end the show with Gunther. We end this in a sit-down interview between Goldberg and Michael Cole, where you're going to see Goldberg says that he is going to beat the fuck out of Gunther at Saturday night's main event. They blurted out. We had an F-bomb drop last week, so I'm sure that they don't want to drop another F-bomb this week, which we know a lot of people going into this Raw Netflix premiere, once Raw went to Netflix, they're expecting the return of the Attitude Era, but they've been very sparing with the foul language and the violence, which, hey, you don't need it all the time. I guess if you use it sparingly, it makes it more of a big deal when you actually get it. Next, we get a clubhouse segment from the Judgment Day. And everybody's talking about how they miss Liv. And then you see Finn really kind of bring the people together. He's like, hey, we all miss Liv here, but we got to move on, right? This is Roxy. You have your Queen of the Ring qualifier match. Me and JD were vying for the tag team championship. And Raquel, you got to get your get back on Rhea Ripley. And then, he's talking Raquel up. He's like, what's this? Where's this enforcer? That we brought into the group. Where is it? You're going to need to get Rhea Ripley back. And then we see Raquel basically nod her head and say, you know what, you're right. I'm going to get back at Rhea. Next, we move on to the Jade versus Roxanne Perez, Queen of the Ring qualifier match. And obviously going into this match, there is a big size advantage. Jade Cargill, she's obviously like this real-life action figure. And Roxanne, she's very small in stature, but I thought the dynamic that they had was pretty interesting. Obviously, Jade, she's not known for her in-ring technique, but it feels as if, as time moves on, with her getting more matches into the ring, she's steadily improving. For me, this is one of those things why we kind of need house shows. I know TKO has pretty much gotten rid of them for the most part, but house shows, not only are they designed to entertain the smaller markets, but it's also an opportunity for people who aren't that great in their ring or need some improvement. Really gives them an opportunity for them to get a lot of reps. And I feel like Jade would be somebody who really would be able to benefit from that. But the way that Jade and Roxanne were able to go at it one-on-one in this match, I thought was very interesting, because there was moments in time where obviously you're going to see that cat and mouse game between Roxanne and Jade, just based off of the size disadvantage that Roxanne had. But the fact that they had this match, and there was moments in time where Roxanne was able to get the better of Jade, and it wasn't just this complete squash match, and it went longer than 2-3 minutes. It was probably closer to 10 or 12. I think we were able to see a little bit more of Jade. Now, the way that it ended was kind of kooky. It felt as if we got this awkward exchange where there was a miscommunication between the two. You see Jade hit Roxanne with a powerbomb, and you see kind of a delay in a count. Then Jade hits the Jaded 1, 2, 3. Jade moves on to the finals of the Queen of the Ring tournament, which should be going one-on-one with Asuka. That should be a fun match, right? Those two people, to be able to see Asuka and Jade, two styles that don't necessarily, mesh that well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup between the two. I think when we're leaving the Queen and King of the Ring PLE, we're going to see Jade win that. And based off of what we saw in the main event, I think that the outcome in the direction of SummerSlam is becoming a little bit more clear, right? Next, we get Gunther doing his in-ring segment where he is basically responding to that interview that we saw with Michael Cole. And you see Gunther basically bring up the fact that, last week was supposed to be this celebration of me being a champion and me regaining my championship. He said, but then Goldberg comes out and tells me that I'm next. He said, usually when people are told that they're next, that comes with a jackhammer, that comes with a spear, 1, 2, 3. He said, but this isn't 1999 anymore. This is 2025, and I am the best wrestler in the planet. I'm the best wrestler in this company, and Goldberg is a 58-year-old one-trick pony. Which, hey, think about this. It's very interesting, right? Goldberg's peak, the hottest that he was 98 and 99, right? Basically a 2-year stretch, and he has been able to rack up millions and millions and millions of dollars just based off of a 2-year peak. And based off of a 2-year peak where he only necessarily needed to hit 2 moves. And his matches only lasted, tops 3-4 minutes. That's amazing. You know, people really want to shit on the guy, but the fact that he's been able to do that, have this, have this run where it was very short and be able to rack up millions of dollars almost 30 years later is insane. And you got to give it up to the guy, right? And this is, Goldberg can't lace up my boots. He's like, I'm going to embarrass him in front of his wife and his kid. And that's the end of this segment. I'm looking forward to that match just to see, what is going to go down. It's kind of like, a train wreck because honestly, Goldberg's talking about coming into this match injured and kind of bandaged up. So for him to be, not at 100% and going up against a guy like Gunther and going into this match, if you would have had a Goldberg at 100%, it would still be very concerning. So the fact that we're not getting him at 100%, going up against Gunther, it's going to be strange. I'm just hoping that it's not a complete, wreck, and we're able to see some type of match to where it's viable, right? I'm assuming that we're going to get a Gunther win, but who knows? I assume that Goldberg was going to lose to the Fiend, and that's not what we got. So at this point, I am not going to sit here and make any predictions when it comes to Goldberg matches because you never know, right? Next, we're getting a backstage segment where, Becky Lynch is responding to what we saw earlier. I forgot to mention that. We saw Bayley warming up, and then you see Lyra Valkyria. I always mess up her name. Basically, give Bayley a heads up and give her a pat on the back, telling her, if anybody deserves a title match, it's you, right? And then you see Bayley basically respond with, I didn't know that I need to ask permission for these title matches. And she basically, came up. She's like, you know what? I kind of snapped there. Once I win this title, you're going to be the first one in line. You see Becky in the background lurking, and then you see Becky respond to it by basically saying, I saw these two conspiring against me. And she walks off, and then we see Jackie Redmond see Sami Zayn. She asks Sami Zayn, she's like, how are you processing this loss that you had against Randy Orton? I know you've been speaking multiple times about how, you want to be champion, how you're going to be champion. How are you processing this? Before he can even answer, you have Karrion Kross interrupt him. And he says, I sat there and basically coming in to tell him that I told you so. You see Sammy basically after that whole, spiel that Karrion Kross gave him, he said, all right. He decks Karrion Kross and he says, our match is official. I talked to Pierce. We're going to have it. It's official. King of the Ring, Karrion Kross versus Sami Zayn. And then you see Karrion basically, hold his mouth because he got decked in it. And then you see Scarlett basically tell him, okay. And then you have Karrion say, got him. Next, we have Bayley versus Becky Lynch. Obviously, two individuals who have a lot of history between the two, dating back to multiple different years, not even throughout NXT, but let's just talk about in recent memory where we saw Becky Lynch take out Bayley to be able to team up with Lyra at WrestleMania. Bayley is wearing her gear that she was supposed to wear at WrestleMania in this match. And obviously, you're going to get a good match between these two, right? We've seen it multiple different times on multiple different occasions. But where the match really got good is we get on the outside, right? Becky's on the outside. We see Bayley try to do a dive over the top, but she was stuffed out by Becky Lynch. And basically, we see Becky throw her over the announce table, and she starts to try to barricade Bayley with all these different chairs to get the count out win, because obviously she is this dastardly heel. But we see Lyra Valkyria come out, take Bayley out of the rubble. We see this teasing confrontation between Lyra and Becky. But obviously, if Lyra hits Becky, she wins by DQ. So we don't see that. We see Lyra get off of the ring apron, and she gets hit with a baseball slide from Becky that was meant for Bayley. And then after that, we see Bayley get in the ring and take advantage of it. But while she is on the top rope, we see Lyra go into the ring and give Becky a case of the beats. That's a DQ. Not only does she screw Bayley out it, she screws herself. So we get this confrontation in the ring between Bayley and Lyra. Like, why'd you do that? This was my match. So obviously, this isn't a tale that is going to be done between these two. We're going to see more interactions between these two going on later. Next, we get a backstage segment. We see Ivy Niles Chad Gable. Chad is telling her that, you're actually been my favorite student. I never told you these things, all of that. And then we see somebody appear from the corner, and it's Penta. And obviously, Chad Gable, not a big fan of the luchadors. We see Chad Gable basically telling him, that there's nothing that brings me more pleasure. It is seeing you get beat. Then he brings up the fact that, all these different things. You see Penta basically telling Chad, chill out, chill out, chill out. But Chad just keeps going and going and going. And then eventually Penta has to kick him and break his arm, give him a little shoulder injury, when he puts him into that little arm bar thing. And we see a rare Ludwig Kaiser sighting in the background. The APB has been put out for the man. We haven't seen him in forever, but eventually we now know that he is alive. He is not trapped in anybody's basement. He is living, he is breathing, and he is back on our WWE screens. Whether it's in a little cameo role or not, the man is alive, right? Next, we get Raquel Rodriguez in the ring. And she says that she isn't going to let Rhea Ripley screw her out of the Queen of the Ring tournament and let her get away with it. She calls Rhea out. Rhea comes out. We see these two brawl. And then you see at some point, you're seeing Raquel getting the better of Rhea. But then Rhea, she makes her comeback. You see Raquel bring out the Slim Jim table. Yes, the Slim Jim table. I feel like every single week now, that table has a sponsorship on it. There's somehow, some way going to find a way to have it involved and have somebody bring it out. Whether they're going to use it or not, every single week. Is it buffering? Huh. Strange. Is it better? Or is it still buffering? Better? Hopefully it's better. But every single week, I feel as if they're going to find a way to bring out that table due to the fact that it has a sponsorship on it now. But we see them bring out the table, and it looks as if Rhea is going to put Raquel through the table. But we see Roxanne Perez come and make the save, jump on her back like a spider monkey that is able to distract Rhea, and then she get hit with a Tejana bomb through the table, and we see Raquel walking tall after this segment. It is made official later on by Adam Pearce that we're going to get Raquel versus Rhea Ripley in a street fight. And next, we are going into the main event, Jey Uso versus Cody Rhodes. Like I said, if you are a 10-year-old child now, this is probably your version of the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan. Two guys who are extremely over in two different ways. Jey Uso, he is, in my opinion, the modern-day Goldberg, or maybe a PG Disney Sandman, where this guy has a phenomenal entrance that makes people want to be very interactive in it. But once you get into that bell, the bell rings and you get into that ring, that leaves a lot to desire. But if we're just going to be completely honest with each other, this is probably one of the better Jey Uso matches that he's had in his career. I know there's a lot of people calling for him to just get back on that ringside and hold that rope to go back to a tag team with his brother. But he was able to really show out tonight going up against Cody Rhodes, who's obviously, QB1, the face of the company right now at this moment. And the story that they wanted to tell, just from the beginning where you saw a handshake with, between these two, was these are guys that are trying to run a friendly fade. But as the match went on, you saw things get a bit more heated between the two. Jey Uso was able to show off what he could do. Obviously, Cody Rhodes was able to show off what he could do as well. And we got a very back and forth match between the two. At one point, you saw Jey Uso hit Cody Rhodes with a crossroads of his own. But throughout this whole match, it never really felt as if Jey really had a chance to win. And obviously, Cody Rhodes hits him with a crossroads. 1, 2, 3. He wins the match. He advances to the King of the Ring finals, which he will be going one-on-one with Randy Orton in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. That's a big match, right? This is a match that most people have been calling to see. Ever since Randy Orton came back from his injury and when Cody Rhodes was the champion, when everybody was trying to, fantasy book opponents for Cody on his run, who was one of the names that most people would want to bring up? It was always Randy Orton. Randy Orton was always on the tip of everybody's tongue when they talked about who is an opponent that people wanted to see Cody Rhodes go up against. And now things are starting to become a lot more obvious as to what we're going to get, right? Pretty sure that we're going to see John Cena retain against CM Punk. And the obvious direction that we're going to get is a rematch between John Cena and Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam, which I'm not sure a lot of people want to see because the first time we see these two go up against each other, it wasn't very good. So I don't know why running it back, people would expect for the match to be better. But, I think what they're trying to do is this is going to be a spot where we see Cody Rhodes win the title again. And then we're going to start this redemption arc of John Cena reverting back to a babyface. And we're going to be able to send him off his merry way in December on a high note, right? And then with the women, I think that we're going to get Jade beat Asuka. And that's going to lead to a very interesting, possible matchup for her. I know that what I think is going to happen is no matter who that she challenges, whether it's Tiffany Stratton or if it's the other champion, I think that we're going to see a cash in by Naomi because I think that makes the most sense, right? We're going to see Naomi cash in on Jade after Jade is able to win the championship at SummerSlam. And I think that further alongs the story for her. You get Jade have a big moment on a big stage, but it also gets to the point where we see this story keep going, right? I think that's the obvious direction for those two winners when it comes to who is going to win the finals. The only way I want to see the Usos together is be against the Lucha Bros. Hey, yeah, I don't know what happened to Rey Fenix, man. I think he might have pissed somebody off or something because he hasn't been on TV in a couple of weeks. I know prior to his release, he posted a photo, when he was still kind of in that limbo mode with AEW of him like in a straight jacket. He's like free Phoenix. He might be back in that straight jacket. Yeah. He might be back in that straight jacket because it feels as if he's not teaming up with his brother, he might be kind of screwed at the moment. And I know that for Penta, he's going on the singles run. It's been very productive for him. He doesn't necessarily need a Lucha Bros reunion, but his brother is gasping for air and crossing his fingers, pretty hard for them to get a Lucha Bros reunion because he freaking needs it, right? Maybe he should have probably stayed in AEW. That might have been better for him because if WWE is treating him the way that they're treating him right now, at least in AEW, we could have saw him have some kick-ass matches. Now he's just on the sideline again. But that kind of happens, right? When you make it obvious that you want to go somewhere else, that you can't use you on TV because we're just building up your stock for your next opportunity. And you're right, it is a dang shame that Phoenix is, on ice at the moment, but who knows, right? This could just be a temporary thing. Maybe he has an injury that we don't know of, but not seeing him on the TV right now. But overall, this is a very solid Raw. Like I said, there was a lot of questions going into the show, just based off of what was going to go down with, if the show was going to take place in its normal location or if it wasn't. But everything has been figured out, at least for now. The show is going to go as scheduled. We got the final set. Looking forward to it. On Saturday, I'll be going live immediately following the show. It's earlier in the afternoon, so it's good for me. Won't have to sit there and wait up late at night because I am getting kind of old and I'm going to be kind of tired. But hey, remember to hit the like button if you haven't. Remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't. I am Kevin Zwicker. We'll be back on Wednesday for the Dynamite post show. It's been kind of wonky, because of the 4-hour blocks that they've been doing and the longer shows that they usually have. But we're going to go back to the Dynamite post show on Wednesday. We'll be there. Yep, back to back. I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.